Electrocast.
Elevate every morning with Tommy John's Second Skin underwear. The luxurious support of Second Skin guarantees everything will go smoothly. With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews, guys love Tommy John. Plus, your most valuable assets are covered with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. Get 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Spotify. Save 20% at TommyJohn.com/Spotify. See site for details.
Well, one thing is we try to add intentionality to the business. What I mean by that is our perspective is that, companies get to a point, especially after they've been run by the same person for a long time, where certain processes are performed in a way because of momentum. The old adage, why are you doing it this way? It's because we've always been doing it that way. And it was probably started that way for a good reason. Does that reason still exist? Maybe, maybe not.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
Hey there. Get comfortable and join me on this latest episode where we'll dive into the gritty world of private equity and the art of the deal with Nick McLean. Ever wondered how someone takes the reins and transforms a business? Nick's got stories that'll light a fire with any entrepreneur. So listen in as we unpack the journey of building, buying, and growing companies from the ground up. Hey, Nick, welcome to the Think Business with Tyler podcast show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So today's topic is going to be private equity and building business value. Before I get into that, I really wanted to learn a little bit about you, both if you could tell me a little bit about your professional side and then something maybe personal about you. I'd love to start off the show that way.
Happily. First off, I know everybody says this, but one of the dominant features of me is I'm just really dedicated to my family. I try and work hard during the week so that I have the weekends to spend with them. I also, I'm the type that stays up late so that I can be home whenever my kids get home from school and whatnot. Again, I know everybody says they're all about their family, and I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just that's the number one driving force for me is my family.
That's awesome.
In terms of my professional career and how I got where I'm going, it wasn't by design, that's for sure. In undergrad, I pursued industrial engineering, which is about making processes more efficient, streamlining, lean manufacturing maybe. Thought operations was the path to the president's office, the CEO, that type of thing. After grad school, worked in consulting for a couple of years with manufacturing clients and whatnot, and everything was going to plan. Left consulting after a couple of years to pursue an MBA, which again was part of the plan. However, going into grad school, my plan was to work for a Fortune 500 company in their corporate rotational program and working there for 20 or 30 years, get the gold watch and then retire, or retire and then go get the gold watch. I'm not sure which is the proper chronology. Anyway, got into grad school and realized that there was this whole world of lower middle market companies, private equity, investment banking. And it's just like a light went off and I thought, wow, this is really where I want to be. So during grad school, made a pivot from a very stable type career path of the Fortune 500 rotational program or whatever, and started down a different path. As I mentioned, family is very important to me. So I didn't want to go to Wall Street or even Chicago. I wanted to stay close to home and ended up in a boutique investment bank in St. Louis, actually. And it was the craziest thing. I'd work in all these jobs. They were all M&A jobs, like good jobs. And after a year or 18 months, or after only like 3 or 4 months in one role, I just kind of got burnt out and started to hate the job. After 1 or 2 of those, it's okay. You can say bad luck or nothing else was available. After 4, 5, or 6 of those, you kind of got to look yourself in the mirror. And that's what I did. In my mind, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur because I never had an idea for a better mousetrap or a killer app. However, there's a type of entrepreneurism that really resonates with me. The phrase hadn't been popularized at the time, but it's called entrepreneurship through acquisition. And again, that type of entrepreneurism is really what resonates with me. And that's why today I feel like I'm an entrepreneur. Again, going back to those 5 or 6 roles where I lost interest, the primary reason there is that I didn't feel like I had a seat at the table. I didn't necessarily need to be president or CEO, but I wanted a seat at the table so I could at least hear about the decisions being made, even if I wasn't the one making them. I realized, though, that if I wanted a seat at the table, not only was I going to have to bring my own seat, I was going to have to build the table. So in 2015 timeframe, launched Four Pillars Investors with the goal of buying 2 businesses, one for me to run and one for my partner, Thomas Sanford, to run. Happy to go into more details there, but that's really what got us started and the early days of the firm.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
That's really what got us started and the early days of the firm.
Gosh, there's so much I want to unwrap there. Let's start with ETA. So entrepreneurship through acquisition, this term. Is that to you any different than really what people have been doing for many, many years? And that's just looking for businesses to buy. Is that kind of the same concept, or in your mind, is that a little bit different in this focus of ETA?
I don't think it's any different. I just think the popularity and the prevalence of folks trying to do that has increased dramatically.
Okay.
Whereas in the past, I think it was more common for folks that were mid-career, maybe even later career, to get burnout from the corporate life. They've built up some good savings. They decided they want to do something a little bit entrepreneurial as a final chapter in their career. Again, that's my impression of what it might have been like 20 or 30 years ago.
Got it.
Today, you have folks all different ages. Some folks that perhaps are even an undergraduate with no real professional experience that are pursuing this as an option. So I think the concept is the same. It's just the type of people and the number of people pursuing it has changed dramatically.
Got it. So your goal of Four Pillars was to buy 2 businesses, one for you, one for your partner. Now, as of right now, do you each have your businesses? And is that still the goal, just 2 businesses, or is there like now a bigger vision?
Well, not quite. I told you how after a year and a half or so, I would get uncomfortable or wouldn't like the roles that I was in. And that kind of happened to me.
Okay.
So the first business we bought was Southwest Steel Fabrication. It's a structural and miscellaneous steel fabricator. After running that for about a year, realized that there was a potential for a roll-up strategy within the steel fabrication industry. You ultimately didn't pursue that because the number of deals that we were working on fell away and weren't able to refill the pipeline. But during that process, I realized that before, where I had thought that I just wanted to be president or CEO of any company out there because that's what was important to me. No, that wasn't really true. What was true is that I wanted to be president or run a company, but that company needed to be in and around M&A. And for that reason, after about a year and a half after running Southwest Steel, transitioned to what's called an independent sponsor model, which is where you're operating like a private equity firm. However, you don't have a committed pool of capital. So that was roughly 2018. We bought the first business in 2016, the second in 2017, the third in 18, then one in 19, then one in 20. I think we didn't buy anything in 21, 2 in 22, nothing in 23, but 24, I'm cautiously optimistic about.
Okay, so that's definitely, I'm not great at math, but I think that's more than 2. So
It is. So you're pretty good. Don't sell yourself short.
I was almost running out of fingers there. No, that's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about this, because this lead for the folks that maybe are out there going, well, what exactly? I've heard this term private equity. PE is the acronym sometimes thrown around there. What does it mean? What are you trying to accomplish by doing that? Are you buying out the owners? Are you taking a piece of the company? Kind of walk us through that.
Absolutely. Typically we pursue change of control transactions where after the transaction closes, we will have a majority control of the company. We will have control of the board to make big decisions, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes we buy 100% of the company. However, I will tell you that typically we want the seller to maintain some level of involvement and also ownership in the new company post close. We all have different ideas and visions of how to grow the business. Also, though, we don't have the institutional knowledge of that company's. We're big about relationships. We're big about forming partnerships. And to us, whenever we buy a business, it's not really the end of the chapter for the business owner. It's the start of a new partnership that we hope can be really invigorating and give them some excitement about the potential for their company to double or triple without them having to risk it all and do all the heavy lifting.
Okay. Outside of industry, because perhaps people in the audience can't really affect the industry, they can't change the industry they're in. What excites you about a business? Like when someone brings a business to you, like what is something, or you hear of a business, what are the like top 5 things that are going to go, wow, these have the variables of what really excites me as a potential acquisition?
What really excites me is one of the taglines we talk about on our website, which is an untapped potential for growth. An untapped potential for growth can come from many different areas, whether it's a new product line, adding equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So let me start with what's not super exciting, because I think that helps to highlight what is exciting. What's not super exciting is if we hear a business owner that, let's just say a manufacturing firm, and he says, you know what, Nick, you can double this business. All you have to do is add a second shift and boom, your revenues and profits will double overnight. And I ask, okay, do you have the demand to fill a second shift? Well, no, but you can find that demand. Just hire some salespeople, and yeah, that's no big deal. I think to myself, if it were that easy, why didn't you just hire a couple salespeople?
Right.
And so, I offer that to show you what as a illustration of what might be exciting. On the other side, we talk to business owners who they have conversations with their customers about how their customer really wants them to grow. However, the business owner at 55, 60, 70, 75, who knows, they're not really interested in buying a $2 million piece of equipment that has a 2 or 3 year ROI whenever they're that close to retirement and really wanting to separate themselves from the business. Those types of situations are very interesting to us, because even though some folks think of private equity as trying to strip the business and run it as lean as possible, even to the detriment of the health of the business, that's not us at all. I mean, we're trying to grow the employee base. We're trying to put more dollars to work in that business, because in our view, you can't double a business by trying to make it smaller. If I could add one more thing, one item from my background that I like to share with folks is, if you look at my undergraduate degree, where I spent my early career, it was about manufacturing. It was about making processes more efficient, lean manufacturing. And I tell you what, I worked on a number of lean manufacturing projects that were very successful. We cut costs, improved efficiencies, and you know what? The bottom line, did it impact it? Well, sure it did, because you saw all those different areas, but it was really hard to tell how much it actually impacted the bottom line. In a different role, though, I worked in business development. I was lucky enough or fortunate enough to land a customer that increased our top line by, it was 10 to 15%. I tell you what, it is easy to see how that impacts the bottom line when you grow revenues by 10 to 15%. And that really changed how I viewed the important operations and functions within a business. I shifted from thinking about how operational efficiency was so important, and that was the real driver for value, shifted to a revenue growth mindset consistent with the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats. If we can grow those revenues and take on work at profitable levels, everybody is going to be better off. We can still do the operational efficiency projects, but man, those growth projects really get me excited.
So you're saying lead with revenue increase and then follow with efficiency.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So is it possible, maybe you can't for confidentiality reasons, but if one of your acquisitions, you've got a handful of them there, is there one that you could use as an example of what excited you, something tangible that excited you about the deal when it first came, like the first thing you saw in it and you go, this is worth more, evaluating more? Does any of them stand out?
Well, yeah, I'll talk about the business out in Portland that my partner is running, and unfortunately, I get to say some positive things about him instead of I wanted to say all these positive things about me. Regardless, we bought the first business there in 2017, and unbeknownst to us, another company in the area had reached out to the former owners of that company, and he was chatting, said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to sell my business. What do you think about these Four Pillars guys?" Well, obviously, we don't know what was said exactly, but the feedback was good enough that this other business owner only wanted to work with us. So that was the first thing that got us excited, because that's a great story, if you will. However, in terms of what got us really excited about the business going forward is almost exactly the same as what I said earlier. This was a situation where we were able to uncover from talks with the employees and the ownership and some other parties that their customers really wanted this company to grow, and the current owner had not been willing to grow with them. Fast forward to today, we have the relationship with that one customer in particular, which I'm not going to name names here if you don't mind, but that the relationship with that one customer is just going really well. We've been able to add new supplier codes with other very well-known, very large, very sophisticated companies. The situation there is just there's so many green shoots. We're doing really great work there, and it all started with with a company that hadn't stagnated, because stagnated, I think has negative connotations. It was just being run by a business owner who didn't have the risk profile to go out and buy the equipment, to go out and add the additional square footage and whatnot. Not being critical at all. It's just, we'll be that way whenever we're approaching retirement, but that is what presents itself an opportunity for us.
Yeah, but in fairness too, as business owners, if you've been doing the same thing for 20 years, you kind of get tapped out, or 25 years or whatever. I'm sure there's a level where you just get tapped out, and it's kind of like, okay, I don't really want the aggravation of having more equipment or whatever. And you get to that point where you just hit a wall, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, like we're looking for folks that have hit that wall, because again, like sometimes even though they're not doing it, like if just whenever we talk about all the growth we want to pursue and how we plan to buy equipment, sometimes, not always, but sometimes it reignites a passion in the business owner, a passion for the business that the business owner never really thought would be there ever again. So those are the types of stories that are just, those are really fun for us, because it's like, everybody's in a room and everybody's, got these high spirits, because again, there's this rebirth passion in the business, both by us as well as the former owner.
Yeah. So, okay, opportunity comes to you. What are some criteria generally that's going to be things you look for in a business? And I'm going to give you some examples. Are you looking for a business to have good processes and systems? Does the owner need to be heavily involved in the business or not heavily involved in the business? Does it need to be profitable as a business? What are some things that you're and I'm asking this question in part to help business owners out there too, to see, demonstrate things that are going to show value in their business.
Absolutely. So I guess our answer is a little bit different just because of our approach, but I will tell you that one big factor is size. Size is not going to kill any deal on its own. However, you do need to think about your audience and make sure that the size of your company is appropriate for the audience that you're going to. If you have EBITDA or seller discretionary earnings of less than 500,000, most traditional private equity firms are not going to be interested. Really, I would say the lower limit in today's private equity world is for most firms is probably going to be 2 million. It used to be 5 million, then it dropped to 3. Now you're seeing a little bit more down to 2. You'll see some that go all the way down to 1. But again, if you're above 2, you're probably going to have enough interested parties purely based off size. Again, I mentioned that we take a little bit of a different approach, and what I mean by that is we try to peel back the layers of the onion to really find out what the true potential of this business is. There are some things that will knock out a company for us. A big one is customer concentration. We'll see companies with revenues that are attributed to 60% of their revenues are attributed to one customer. That's just a very difficult risk for us to figure out a way to mitigate. So I would say that customer concentration by far is the biggest hurdle, if a company exhibits that. So that's certainly something to think about. But beyond that, again, we're trying to make a case for why this could be the next great growth story in the Four Pillars portfolio. And that takes a lot of different shapes. Does the seller need to be involved? Not necessarily. I mean, if they've been able to build a management team that is operating well without that owner, that's great. Do they have processes and procedures? If they do, that's great as well. If they don't, that's a real opportunity for us to add some value. What I mean by that is, as companies get larger, the level of sophistication increases. Now, we're operating in the lower middle market and the middle market. The fun part is that a lot of times that process and those processes and procedures don't lead to, overly bureaucratic situations or too much red tape. Now, if you look at the, companies like, Google and General Electric and all those, I mean, they're probably to the point where there's so much red tape and bureaucracy that it stifles efficiency. But the companies that we look at, adding processes and procedures really have the ability to improve efficiencies. So, to the extent that you're able to show that if Joe out in shipping, if he gets, run over by a bus, or a better example, if he wins the lottery, you've got the documented processes to know how the next person can just step in, follow those processes, and you're back up and running. Those are great too. So, again, I didn't really answer your question, I know, and I apologize. But again, our approach is really to, peel back the onion to see what is really there, because we want to be, we're supporters. Like, we go in being optimistic that this could be a really exciting opportunity. It's on us to figure out why it's so exciting.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
We go in being optimistic that this could be a really exciting opportunity. It's on us to figure out why it's so exciting.
Yeah. Well, what would you say though, like for the business owners in the audience, like what should they be doing? Part of what's, I think, driving this whole ETA thing is with boomers. I don't even remember some of the statistics, but it's some crazy amount of businesses that are potentially going to transfer ownership in, what is it, like the next, is it 20 years or something like that? Some crazy number. And so what are things, is there anything that stands out in your mind that business owners should be doing that gives them options when they do get to the point of maybe wanting to look for opportunities of either selling a portion or all of their business?
Well, absolutely. I mean, first off, I apologize for the shameless plug, but I've actually
Please.
written an ebook or a guide on this topic, and there are many more items than we can cover here. It can be found at our website, fourpillarsinvestors.com/book. However, there are a couple things that I would like to point to. And first off, I think that many business owners might bristle at this, but a good starting point is just having clean books.
Okay.
What I mean by clean books isn't necessarily that you don't have any expenses running through the income statement or that the financials are audited. Not that at all. Really what I mean is being in a position to where if your potential buyer asks for monthly financial or monthly income statement and balance sheet for the last 3 years, you're able to provide that without having to go to your accountant. You're able to show that during this period, here are the personal expenses that were run through the business. So you can add those back, obviously. You can talk about what are the key drivers in terms of why profitability was higher for this period versus that period. If you can talk about, how you're actually using the financial statements to make better decisions within your business. I mean, that's a good starting point, because if you can show that you're actually very knowledgeable about the key drivers of the business, that's a great way to start the relationship. If I could just expand on that a little bit, sometimes the business owners that we work with, they really feel like they're not in control of their business. And what I mean by that is, they might say, well, we hope next year is going to be good, but we don't really know. Or, yeah, last year was great, this year's not so much. And it's like, well, what are you doing to make sure that this year is a good year? It's like, well, there's so many factors outside of our control. I get it. I mean, I know there are a lot of factors outside of your control when you're running a business. The challenge as a business owner is you've got to minimize those factors that are outside of your control. Take your destiny into your own hands and make sure that your company is performing well, regardless of what's going on in the outside world. I know you can't entirely remove the impact of the broader economy and other factors like that. But at the very least, take the approach that you're not going to just be completely subject to what the economy is doing or what your competitors are doing or something along those lines, because the best businesses we see perform better than their peers in good times and bad.
Oh, that's interesting. You do see that, huh? Whether it's a good or a bad time, that they're going to tend to be on the top side.
Well, I mean, I can give you a great example here.
Yeah.
We were working on a deal within the quick service restaurant space. Okay. And so what was really great about this is it's not like I'm just working on two separate transactions or two separate companies in different parts of the country. They're both, quote unquote, manufacturing, and they have some similarities, but they're not the same. These are within the same brand of this QSR brand. They are within the same geographic region. So really, they are very similar. One of them had markedly decreased performance over a 3-month period. The other company improved. You talk to the one with the performance that was bad. It's like, oh, well, yeah, but food costs were so high, and the weather. Oh, the weather was really bad this year. That really hurt foot traffic. Okay, well, this other guy who's in your backyard, he had to deal with those things too, and his revenues and profits actually increased. Obviously, I didn't bring that up because I'm not going to get a good answer. But I mean, that was a great case of very, very, very much an apples to apples comparison, which is uncommon for us due to the big variety between businesses, industries, et cetera.
Sure. No, that makes sense. One thing I want to switch gears on in terms of how you guys add value, obviously capital is part of it, but beyond capital, what do you think that you do in terms of adding value into the business?
Well, one thing is we try to add intentionality to the business.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, our perspective is that, companies get to a point, especially after they've been run by the same person for a long time, where certain processes are performed in a way because of momentum. The old adage, why are you doing it this way? It's because we've always been doing it that way.
Always done it. Yeah.
And it was probably started that way for a good reason. Does that reason still exist? Maybe, maybe not. We're not necessarily looking to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to change simply for the sake of change. However, what we are doing is we're trying to uncover what processes are or what activities are performed for an actual reason. If we can uncover that, okay, well, we don't know why they're performed that way, but it still looks good, great. We don't need to change that. But a lot of times what we do is we ask a whole bunch of stupid questions, and 9 out of those questions are bad. And actually the 10th one is bad too, but the 10th one is close enough to being good that it gets somebody on the management team to say, you know what, Nick, that's yet another bad question. What you should be asking this, but that really, gets me to thinking about how we could do things differently, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, we're not the type that's going to come in and paint the lobby blue because it used to be green and think that we're doing great things because all the change we're implementing. Really what we're trying to do is trying to listen to the management team and act with intentionality so that if there's a new piece of equipment that we need to buy, we're buying it for the right reason. If there's a customer that we need to develop a stronger relationship, we're doing that with a reason. If we need to fire a customer, we have the reasons that we're doing that as well.
Yeah. So you have a YouTube channel and it's about PE. What do you think are like the 3 big misconceptions about PE? Is there anything you can share that might give us a different viewpoint?
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to get to 3, but the first one I always think of is not all private equity is created equally. I've had the experience of working with a lot of different private equity firms, and at the high level, they seem similar, in terms of the types of companies that they're interested in terms of how they plan to grow, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, private equity firms, just like any company, are made up of people, and those people are going to be different. They're going to have different desires and different working styles and different thoughts on how to grow the business. And so, even though for some people, private equity is a 4-letter word, and I understand why they feel that way, I think it's important to understand that that's not that's not reflective of all of private equity. Perhaps you need to find the needle in the haystack, so to speak, but there are definitely great private equity firms out there. There are great people that are working at those private equity firms. And before completely ignoring private equity as a potential exit option, you get to know some folks at the private equity firms. I mean, forget about learning about the firm, just get to know the people. And if you get to the point where you feel like you're able to develop a good relationship with the principal or the decision maker at that particular private equity firm, you feel like that's a person that you would enjoy working with, at that point, you start to rethink about private equity and whether or not that might be a good option. I mean, that's definitely number one. The second one I would say is that, I just would encourage a deeper analysis of how the private equity firms try to grow. Again, there's this misconception that private equity firms try to grow by shrinking the business. They put all this debt on it. They want to decrease employees. They want to not take care of equipment, et cetera, et cetera. We take more of a pluralist type approach, and that's not the exact right word, but I guess what I mean is we're trying to make the pie bigger, not just get a bigger piece of the pie. Again, like we want to add equipment. We want to add employees. We want to increase square footage. We want to make sure that a competitive compensation and benefits plan is in place for all the employees. We want to create career paths for the employees at the companies that we purchase. So I realize that that's only two, but again, it's when it comes to private equity, what I would say is that you've developed your own thoughts as to what that is. And that very well might be true based off your interactions. But just remember, like in anything in this world, there are other options out there. And perhaps those other options would be a better fit and would change your view on the industry.
Do you ever, when you're evaluating a deal and then you say, this isn't the right deal for us, do you typically tell the owner of that business, do you go, hey, these are the things that you need to do and come back to me a year from now? Or is it usually just like, nah, this just isn't the right deal, sorry, and shake hands and move on? What does that look like typically?
Oh, I mean, I've been in the reverse on, I hear no. I mean, I hear no so much. All right.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I hear no so often, and it's not always helpful to hear why the answer is no.
Okay.
But I think at a human level, anytime you hear no, you would like to know why the answer was there. And so for that reason, we're always going to be as helpful and as candid as we can with a business owner in talking about why, this is not going to work out for us.
On that no, do you usually what are the common no's that you give to them, and what are the things that potentially they could do to improve, was where I was going with that. And sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all. A lot of times it just revolves around valuation and company performance. So what we'll see sometimes is we'll have a business owner that says, "Oh yeah, our company's really stable, on really good footing, growth potential is really high." And then you look at the financials and they tell a different story. The performance is much choppier. And sure, maybe the last calendar year or the most recent trailing 12-month period does in fact exhibit some growth. If there's all that choppiness, how do you make the case that this growth is going to be sustainable, whereas in the past there's been that choppy performance? I mean, that's a very common reason. And also, it's not only just the performance, it's the fact that oftentimes the seller wants a multiple on that highest number. Perhaps we should be paying the multiple on that highest number, and I'm wrong in that one. But I think it's kind of a human emotion to never want to buy at the top, and we are sensitive to that. I mean, we want to be fair to the business owner and acknowledge that, hey, you've done some good work here, and it's you've shown some growth. But also, we have investors, we have lenders that we have to work with, and we have to be good stewards of the money that people entrust us with. And always just taking the seller's word for it that this growth is sustainable, it's going to get us in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And some averaging seems fair to me than taking, because in my time looking at businesses for sale, I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you've seen this way more than me, usually their most recent year is their all-time best year. And so that always kind of tweaks me a little bit, because it's like, okay. Why is it just this year all of a sudden it's so great? Like, I don't know. It just sends up couple red flags for me.
Well, do you know what drives me crazy is whenever you have this business that's exhibiting performance, just like you mentioned, they've been around for 30 years or however long, and the business owner says, our name's finally starting to get out there and people are recognizing it. And I'm thinking, okay, so the first 29 years of your business, nobody knew about your company, but all of a sudden in year 30, people have finally heard about you guys, and that's why there's all that growth. Okay, that's an interesting take. I mean, I've actually heard that before.
Yeah, that's funny. Hey, before we wrap up here, where I want to summarize with 3 great actionable tips you gave us. What I took away from my notes, have a good set of books. That's number 1. That's a huge thing. So if you don't have a good set of books, I want you to go out today and I want you to go get a good accountant, good bookkeeper, and get your books in right order. Next one was know the drivers of your business. So when you have fluctuations period over period, really understand what those drivers are for it, and then think about how you're going to correct them. And then number 3 is have 3 years of good financials. So if you don't have good financials that you can look back that are trending and showing a good 3-year history, let's start doing that so that when you get to a point that someday you're going to want to sell, you have a nice, good set of books. Nick, how did that sound? Anything you want to add? Anything you want to correct?
Well, I think those 3 are great. I think that those are definitely 3 very good ones to start with. There's numerous more, obviously. The only one that I'll add here is, and it's a little bit nuanced, but I'm not asking a business owner to actually implement a growth plan. However, it can really add a lot of value if you start to go down that path. What I mean by that is don't just tell me that customer X has been clamoring for you to add this capability or for this service or whatnot. Start to go down the path. See what it would cost to add the people to be able to provide that service. Start having talks with the customer about what the price point might be, what the delivery terms are, so that you can have a better understanding of the likelihood for success or what the project is going to look like if you actually decide to push go. Now, you don't have to push go, but so often we hear people talk about this and then they realize that, oh, yeah, we thought you were going to buy it for $100, but we only want to buy it for $50. Oh, there goes your growth strategy. If you can just do some of that early level diligence or whatever you want to call it, I mean, that can really be a really exciting part of the business, because then the potential buyer is like, wow, I mean, this is like all buttoned up. All I got to do is push go, and we can grow revenues and earnings by 10 or 20% or whatever the number might be.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
I mean, this is like all buttoned up. All I got to do is push go, and we can grow revenues and earnings by 10 or 20% or whatever the number might be.
How do you feel about when you say that growth strategy and just financials in general? How do you feel about the owner having confidants or experts working with them, whether that be like a small business CFO or a business coach? Do you view that as a positive when you enter into those conversations with them? Or do you view that as another barrier in terms of having clear conversation with the owner?
Well, generally speaking, what I would tell you is if there are folks that are smart and have helped the business, we're in favor of that, especially if those smarts and those people are going to remain with the business post-close. If you have a really great CFO that has gotten the books into shape and that guy's gone after the deal closes, I mean, sure, it's helpful because you have good financials, through closing, but you're going to have a hole afterwards. So, my mindset is I'm never going to be one to think that I'm the smartest guy in the room. Always, to a point, always think that the more smart people, reasonable, level-headed people you can get in the room, the better. And that definitely applies to the situation that you just outlined there.
Very cool. Okay, so I'll put this in the show notes. 4pillarsinvestors.com, and the 4 is written out. So 4pillarsinvestors.com is your website. You've got a e-guide coming out, how to sell your business to private equity. And to get to that, now they can sign up now, but it's not available yet. Is that correct?
They can sign up. They can get the book now.
Oh, they can get the book now? Okay. And just the URL for that is the same thing, 4pillarsinvestors.com/book. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. And I'll put that in the show notes at thinktyler.com. And then in addition to that, the URL is a little hard to say, so I'll have to put it in the show notes, but you have a YouTube channel. Is it under your name, Nick McLean? Is that all they need to do, a search?
To do a search, they can go to youtube.com/@Nick4Pillars. And again, the 4 is spelled out, not the numeral.
Got it. Okay. And I'll also put that in the show notes. And so anything else, Nick, that I left out or anywhere else you want people to reach out to you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show, man. You are a wealth of knowledge. I love talking about the topic of selling and buying businesses. I think it's a great topic. And it sounds like you guys are doing real well because you went from 2 to multiple pretty quickly, it sounds like.
I mean, I still think that I've had far more failures than successes, but maybe that's how every entrepreneur feels.
I think so, for sure. Well, thanks again, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Think Business with Tyler. But we have plenty more resources to help you in your pursuit of business excellence on our website at thinktyler.com. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode of the show, feel free to reach out to us on social media at think_Tyler. We look forward to helping you think life, think success, and think business.
Ever thought about starting your own podcast?
Do you have a business or a message you want to share with the world?
Well, now it's easier than ever with Electricast. Hi, I'm Mark Netter.
And I'm Peter Rafelson. We're the founders of Electricast Media.
Whether you want to start a new podcast or already have one, join Electricast to grow your audience, monetize your content, and build your community.
With our simple sign-up, you get free promotion, world-class analytics, premium ads, and personal support.
Go to electricast.com and join our community today.
Electricast. Transform your influence.
Electricast.
Welcome to Ringside with Ray and Prince. My name is Ray Leonard Jr.
Oh, is that the set? No, that's just my dad.
My name is Prince Daniels Jr.
Daniels again with a big home touchdown.
On this show, we come to humanize
athletes, entertainers, business executives. We're going to see what makes them tick.
Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there. Peace and power.
Electricast. Electricast.